I believe if you want to create change, then you have to create the conversation for change. And that's simply encouraging. So every week, I will give you a courageous conversation with someone in the community or someone that you may well know. So now let me introduce you our first courageous conversation with Cathy Williams.
So my name's Cathy Williams. I'm the president and CEO of NeighborWorks Columbus. It's a nonprofit housing organization. I also serve on the Muskogee County School Board as District 7 representative. You are in District 7 right now. I serve the downtown and South Columbus area. Pretty much all the neighborhoods that hug the river is District 7, and it's my honor and privilege to serve the people in District 7. So I was born in California, and my father was a university professor, and he worked for the United Nations, so we moved a lot as a child. Kind of his last stint was in South Florida, which is where I was raised. My parents divorced, and my mother remarried a military man, and they sent us to Fort Benning. So I came here in 1973 to Fort Benning, and I entered Spencer High School as a sophomore, I believe, and went through junior and senior year, graduated in 1975. I packed my 1972 red Pinto and sprinted back to South Florida to go to college. And while I was in Germany in the 80s, traveling to see my mom, who was husband was stationed over there, I met my husband-to-be, and we married in Switzerland and traveled throughout Germany. And I'll be darned if they didn't send him right to Fort Benning, Georgia. So came back in 1982 and decided that this is where I wanted to stay. God had told me, this is where you need to be, and I finally gave up fighting it and settled in 1982, raised my children, and really have enjoyed watching this city blossom into what it is today.
What's your biggest mistake in life?
Oh, I don't really count mistakes. I don't think that's very productive. I mean, it's not like you can go back and redo it, and I don't know that I would redo much. I was fortunate in my life to have some really good mentors. Actually, one of them I mention often was Mrs. Skinner at Spencer High School. She was the one that first challenged me. She said, you know, Cathy, I think you need to look at political science. I think you need to go into public service. And I kind of laughed it off as a junior and a senior in high school, but her words stuck with me. When I decided to run the very first time for office and lost, I called her, and I had an opportunity to sit down and tell her how much she meant to me. And no, she isn't. What an impact she had on my life. And I guess it was the year I did get elected, 4 years later, that she sent me all the clippings from the newspaper and congratulated me. And she passed away about 6 months after I was elected. People like her are sprinkled throughout my life, really sort of shaped who I am and my desire to serve the public, both on the political side in the school board, but also in the business side, because I run a nonprofit organization that is truly my heart.
So tell me this, you said you moved a lot as a child. How was that? Was it tough, or was it?
It was just what it was. I was too young to really understand that we were doing something that other people didn't do. So my brother was born in the Philippine Islands. My sister was born in South Florida. I was born in California. So we just it was just a way of life for us. But when I got into, I guess it was second or third grade when we finally settled down, we stayed in one place until I left.
Where is
in
that?
South Florida.
Oh, okay.
And that's kind of where I call home. Other than Columbus, my father still lives in that area, so I still go back to see him. Of course, this is my home and has been since I moved here. But you know, if you had to say, well, where'd you come from? I'm from South Florida.
Okay. Okay.
I remind people all the time.
Okay. Now
I had to come north to get to the south.
So you're a successful person. I think so. What's one thing you wish young people would understand now about success and everything that comes with it?
It's hard work. I don't know many successful people that haven't worked really hard at what they do. Serving in political office is hard work. Getting elected is hard work. Running a nonprofit with 20 employees is hard work. Serving the public and trying to figure out how to close the gap of what's happening in the wage disparities and the income and the wealth disparities in our society is hard work. So I think, if anything, I would have two messages. One, stay in school. There is nothing more important than a good education. Really value that education and get the most out of it. Don't just slide through. Get the most out of it that you can, because it will serve you later. And second, understand nothing comes easy. If it's worth having, it's worth doing right, and it's hard work. And I think that there are people student age, graduate age of high school who think, well, I can just do this because I want to. It doesn't work that way. You have to figure out what you want to achieve, and you got to put your nose to the grindstone, and you got to make it happen.
Now, being a Caucasian female, successful female, what would you say? Did you have it easy when you grew up? Did you have it easy?
No, I mean, I don't know that we had it easy. My father, excuse me, I mean, I suppose we were middle income, if you could, qualify it. When I married, my husband was an NCO.
What is that? What's
It's a
NCO?
non-commissioned officer
Okay.
in the Army. And when I got pregnant with my first child, I got laid off of work, and we were in a rough place. I had to go on food stamps and WIC vouchers in order
you've
to.
had it just as.
Yes, I have been there, and it was difficult, but we persevered, and we got through it, and that's what life is all about. It's about ups and downs. It's about peaks and valleys, and the best you can hope for, excuse me, is to sort of find that even keel that is not necessarily too extreme on either side. And then you just sort of ride that and go with it. But I've been blessed. Like I said, I've had some great people around me, teachers, mentors, friends, colleagues. I try to learn all the time. I think that sometimes the phrase a lifelong learner sounds cliche. It's not. And if you want to achieve anything, you need to commit yourself to being a lifelong learner, because life changes. This country changes a lot sometimes, uncomfortably sometimes. And so you have to always be aware and learning what is new in order to understand what is happening.
What would you say to a young boy, black or white? What would you say to a young boy, a young female that is struggling in life right now?
Well, I think every struggle is so individualized, it's hard to generalize a response. I would say that if you're struggling with whatever, find those people around you that you can trust, that you love or they love you, and sort of let them help you with the struggles. I think one of the hardest, most tragic times in my life were those times that I felt so completely alone. And you're never really alone unless you allow yourself to be alone. And when you're struggling, that's the last time in the world you should allow yourself to be alone. That's when you need people the most. And I would say allow the people around you that you trust, your family, your friends, your mentors, your peers, your colleagues, whatever you classify them as. Find them and let them support you and get you through the struggle.
Okay. And I know you have to go in a minute. I don't want you to be late. One more question, or a couple more, 2 or 3 more. what's the best advice besides you're a teacher and a Spencer? What's the best advice you've ever been given?
Wow, I don't think I've ever been asked that question. Best advice I have ever been given, I would have to say, is enjoy life.
And what's the best advice you've ever given?
Well, my kids will probably tell you I give them advice all the time, but I would have to say find your joy and live in it.
What do you know for sure about anything? What do you know for sure?
I know for sure that being a grandmother is the best darn thing in the whole wide world.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Cathy.
And it's, let me get this right, Mateo?
Yes, Mateo.
Mateo. Thank you, Matthew. I
You're
appreciate
welcome.
it.